What is layering? This is a technique that involves using multiple layers of clothing that can be added or removed as needed in order to prevent excess heat and thus moisture buildup. Why do we want to avoid humidity? In winter, the worst enemy is humidity because it can quickly lead to hypothermia. Once a garment becomes wet, it loses some of its insulating capacity, and water strongly activates heat loss due to its thermal conductivity. The number of layers used and their nature will vary depending on several factors: the outside temperature, the duration of the hike, the wind, your resistance to the cold, your level of sweating, your warm-up speed, and the level of intensity. The outside temperature. It's pretty obvious that you will need more layers and or warmer layers at -20 than at 0 degrees. It is important to understand that the use of a very low temperature coat is never recommended other than during very low temperatures and low activity level, as you will not be able to remove it because with a heavy coat normally you don't have layers, and when it will become wet it's practically impossible to dry. In addition, it will offer less protection against the cold. The duration. A hike of a few minutes in jogging and a hike of several hours do not require the same preparation. But be careful, you should always anticipate an accident, and you could find yourself waiting for help for several hours. So if you're in jogging mode with fewer layers, make sure you have enough in case you have to wait there for a while. The wind. The wind can reduce the temperature very quickly and speed up cooling significantly, especially if your clothes are wet. Hence the importance of having a windproof layer. You're resistant to the cold. We all have a different level of tolerance to the cold, which means that some will need more layers or warmer layers than other hikers. The level of sweating. Some people, like me, warm up and start sweating very quickly. This is extremely important as it will directly influence the number of layers one should use initially to prevent your clothes from getting wet too quickly. Avoid cotton during winter because it will trap all the humidity and does not breathe. It's important here to discuss the famous breathable technical clothing. A garment that breathes does not necessarily mean it does not get wet. It may become less quickly, but if your sweat level is high, you should realize that no clothing, no matter how expensive, will stay dry. You're going to have to face it and adjust your layers based on this factor. Warm-up speed. This means the speed at which your body will reach its operating temperature during a hike. For some, like me, it takes as little as 5 minutes. And for others, like my friend behind the camera, will take forever. But jokes aside, for sure his body will hardly heat. And basically, it may depend on your genetics and or your body constitution. Intensity. Clearly, if you are on a fun and slow hike, your body is not going to generate the same heat release as if you are on a jog mode. So you will have different level of layers depending on your level of intensity. So here were the factors that will influence your layering. It is your responsibility to know your body, to prepare yourself well, and nothing is better than experience. So don't hesitate to test. And always remember, start while feeling a bit cold so you don't get hot too quickly and humid too quickly and then get cold right after the beginning of the hike. There are different possible layers. Then depending on the above factors, you can combine them appropriately. So some people may double or triple the number of layers. Basically, it will depend on you and what you feel comfortable with. The base layer. This is normally a close-fitting, long or short-sleeve layer that is designed to effectively keep your body temperature but breathe to wick excess moisture as well as possible. It is a thermally efficient layer due to its fit to the body design and conception. There are several models with different fabric designs, like Lifa, Merino, different wool blends, heat gear from Under Armour, which is basically my favorite, which I am wearing right now. So as you see here, I only have 3 layers. This is my base layer here, which is a long sleeve like a Under Armour heat gear. The second layer, there will be slightly warmer and depend on your personal preference, but which needs to be thin and of a material, again, that breathes as much as possible. A fleece textile layer, a little fitted coat, or my favorite, 100% wool shirt. So this is like a military style sweater. I love this kind of layer because it has so many benefits. It's warm, it's well fitting and comfortable, breathes very well, and the advantage of pure wool is that it is one of the only fabrics which, even when wet, maintains excellent thermal capacity, and one of the reasons sailors have been using it for decades. So basically you see it here very well, like it's a little close fitting, a little bit like elastic in it, long sleeved, so I love these. Finally, the other layer. Normally, this is a small, like, insulating coat. Its purpose is to give a greater thermal effect and to protect against bad weather and partially from the wind. This layer is normally partially waterproof. It will protect from the snow, but not the rain for a long time. If the temperatures are lower, then it could be a bigger and a more insulating one, like something like this. So you see it's bigger, thicker, like it's made for colder temperatures, but I wouldn't go with something that is very, very thick, very heavy, very, very warm, like we've thought before. Don't forget that it needs to be something as part of the layering system. You should always have a good waterproof windbreaker for strong winds and rain. It can also be added as an extra layer. For the lower body, it is normally quite simple because it is less sensitive to the cold and does not generate a lot of sweat. Basically, so a base layer like you have for the top of the body, and then after that combined with a winter hiking pants of different thickness or different heat levels are normally sufficient. If not, you can add in between the pants and the base layer an extra like merino wool small layer or something of the sort. For someone like me, 3 layers is enough for, I would say, over 80% of my hikes. But several people will need doubling on some of the layers. For example, my partner, for the same hike, he will use 5 or 6 layers because his resistance to the cold is low and his body hardly warms up. In addition, he hardly sweats. It will therefore have a long base layer, a short base layer, wool or merino shirt, small coat, and his outer layer. So that's a lot more layer than I need to, but there's no perfect recipe. The perfect recipe is the recipe that is good for you. Unless you're sweating at all, I always recommend bringing an extra base layer and changing it halfway through the hike. It's amazing the effect of putting a dry layer could have on you after a few hours of hiking. You will be warmer and more comfortable. Often we take a break for dinner, and being stopped, we get cold very quickly, especially if we are wet. So it is the perfect time to change and get it done right from the start of the stop. Then put on all your layers to stay warm during that stop. When we leave, we can remove the extra layers that we don't need. I also recommend having a replacement pair of warm socks. It's a must in your hiking bag because some of you will sweat a little bit more from their feet. So it is important to change the socks because the feet are a part of the body which is very sensitive to the cold, especially during stops, and takes a long time to warm up. Always keep those little hot shots pouches to warm your hands and your feet with you. And feel free to use them. They're very practical and will keep your feet and your hands a little bit hotter. Spare clothes and spare socks are always something that you need to have in your bag as well, because you never know. One thing very important is to keep 2 plastic bags. They can save your life if you step in water, and that can happen a lot more often than you might think. You remove your wet boots, you replace your socks with dry ones, you can apply some hot pouches, and then after that you place your feet inside of the plastic bags before you put them back in the boots, after making sure to wrung them properly as well as possible. Your feet will be then protected from water and humidity, and you will be able to maintain a certain level of heat despite them being wet. A friend of mine was able to experience this while we were hiking at Mount Gosford, and he will never leave without plastic bags again. Lucky for him, I had some. The layering and its principles also apply to the hands. Like a small thermal light glove combined with a good insulating glove or a good mitt is always a winner. I start the hike with a small basic glove, and often over -5 I find myself bare hands. I know I'm an exception, so having 2 layers allows you to adjust. It will I will always have my basic gloves with me, my ski gloves, as well as a good pair of mittens in my bags, so I can adjust based on the temperature. Finally, in winter, it's always better to have more layers than not enough, because it's easier to manage too many layers than not enough. So, one last point, layering also good for the head as well. So a small tight-fitted toque combined with a hotter one, layering again, and same thing for your neck. So you can have one of these small light buffs and a wool one. So again, you can make different combinations. So thank you, and we appreciate you watching. Feel free to like our channel and share our videos, hoping that our tips will help you enjoy your activities even more. Thank you.